Get all the news and controversy of the NFL right here on the Blitz Zone with your hosts, Eric Rosen and Jamie Hickson, as they discuss the hot topics concerning your favorite players and team, the winners, the losers, the big plays, and the big hits from around the league. Right here, only on the Blitz Zone.
Seven months ago, it was the New England Patriots. They were down 28-3 against the Atlanta Falcons at Super Bowl 51 in Houston in the first half. Then all of a sudden, the second half comes, and they go on a tear with the magical catch by, of course, Julian Edelman. For the Atlanta offense causing a massive penalty to help New England. And the big touchdown in overtime by James White to secure the Patriots' fifth Super Bowl victory, 34-20 in the first ever overtime. And the New England Patriots win their second Super Bowl in the last 3 years. Now, 7 months later, a lot has changed. A lot of storylines have come out. New players have changed locations, but what remains the same for all of us is the love of this game that we call football. Welcome back to Season 6 of your NFL and college football program, the Blitz Zone. Hi, everybody. I'm Eric Rosen, and we're coming to you live from the studios of CTV in Staten Island, New York on this Friday, September 8th. And with me, as always, is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jamie, the sportsman Hickson.
It's a great night to talk football. It's a great weekend to start off the NFL season. And we're also going to be starting off the second full weekend of college football, which technically started the last weekend of August, but there were only a handful of games. Last week, there were just games that had people like dropping their jaws. Texas A&M versus UCLA, anyone? You know, leave it to a historic program like UCLA, which has had so many tremendous players coming in and out of that program to pull off not just a comeback, but a 34-point comeback the way they did. This only makes Josh Rosen's stock go up even more. But let's see what they can do for an encore.
What about Maryland beating Texas 51-41? What about Liberty beating Baylor 48-45? What about the unfortunate ACL tear of DeAndre Francois for Florida State in the game against Alabama? And, of course, my Florida Gators losing 33-14 at Arlington against the Michigan Wolverines. There are so many great storylines in college, but the NFL, in the 7 months that followed the Patriots' Super Bowl 51 victory, there have been some rule changes, as there always will be at their annual meeting in March. And one of the new rule changes, celebrations are back without any repercussions from the NFL. Finally, right? These kids are no longer to say that the NFL stands for the No Fun League.
Well, there are still moments where the NFL can definitely be no fun at all, but just like any competitive sport, football is a really emotional game. It's almost impossible to try and contain one's emotions, especially when making a big play such as what one Kareem Hunt did last night when he got his first touchdown of the game, his first NFL touchdown, followed up after he wound up fumbling on his very first NFL carry. It just goes to show you how much resolve some rookies have, and it also goes to show you how a team reacts to crisis. Last night, the Chiefs did something that no other team or no other opponent would have done against the Patriots. They reacted in crisis. How? For one, they dodged a bullet by having that Rob Gronkowski touchdown overturned. And also, not one, but two fourth down stands by the Chiefs defense against that high-powered Patriot offense. And it wound up catapulting the Chiefs into probably the most improbable victory that any team could record against a defending champion to start the season.
This was the first time that Kansas City won, and they did win last night 42-27 in the NFL opener in Gillette Stadium, which is tradition, of course, that the season opens at the home of the previous Super Bowl winner. The Patriots were looking to have a perfect 19-0 season. Well, that, of course, will not happen. And here's what happened. The Patriots were up 7-0 after a Mike Gillislee touchdown, one of the newest running backs on the team, to grace the squad's backfield. Then at the 32-yard line, Kareem Hunt at Kansas City's own 32 fumbles the ball. New England recovers, and it looks like a 14-0 lead because Tom Brady throws a perfect pass to Rob Gronkowski, one of the most incredible tight ends in the league.
And also one of the most fun to watch as well. He's just a beast every time he catches the ball.
Well, what looked like to be a touchdown, making a 14-0 lead, was then overturned on review, which, of course, all touchdowns, all scoring plays, fumbles, or any turnovers are reviewed by the NFL. But if you go to the stadium this year, here's another little rule change. You're not going to see any more of those big blue booths anymore where the refs go into when they have to look at a replay. Why? The NFL decided to have Park Avenue, which is the headquarters of the NFL in New York City, review all plays, and what the referees end up getting are these window tablets from New York to look at, and they get a headphone, sort of like what Major League Baseball does you know, when they have challenges, and they're told by Park Avenue what the final decision will be. So the decision was that the touchdown actually was no good. In fact, it hit the ground, the ball.
I'm curious to know, though, exactly who in Park Avenue do these referees keep in contact with in the event of a call?
Well, they probably have the head of officiating there, along with several people, employed by the organization or in the referees portion of the NFL, oversee all these plays and calls. It's going to be crazy to see this happening on Sunday because there's 12 games taking place on Sunday. The majority of them being at 1 o'clock. So you're going to have multiple televisions and closed circuit events where all these officiators are going to be watching these games, and the 4 o'clock games, and of course the Sunday night game taking place. Then you have the 2 Monday night games, So it's going to be crazy to see how this plays out. But it worked out for the first night. It had a major impact on the amount of time cut in the game. And there's some other rule changes too. But at the heart of all this, the fact is the Patriots did lose to the Kansas City Chiefs. Most people, you and I probably, and everybody else, predicted New England, of course, to win at home. After all, they had a 17-14 lead at the half, which, if you know, since Gillette Stadium's been open, no team has come into Gillette Stadium and won a game when New England was leading at the half. Well, it took 83 games for Kansas City to break that amazing streak right there, and then they ended up winning 42-27. And how about Alex Smith, those 4 big touchdown plays, a 78-yarder and a 75-yarder to both Kareem Hunt and Tyreek Hill.
So much for Alex Smith being threatened of his job security by Patrick Mahomes Jr. He's now in his 13th NFL season, and he still showed that he can be not necessarily an elite quarterback, but a quarterback that can do just enough to lead his team to victory. As far as Kareem Hunt is concerned, I looked at his numbers from when he played at the University of Toledo.
Only 1 fumble his entire career, and yet last night, he had that crazy fumble that took place. By the way, how about Mike Gillislee? One of the new running backs. He had 3 short rushing touchdowns, and yet, he's the first person to do that since Terrell Owens had 3 touchdowns in 2004 with the Eagles to debut with a new team and get that many touchdowns. Yep. That's just an interesting fact right there.
And just to give you an idea about that young man, Kareem Hunt had a grand total of 855 touches in 4 years at Toledo. 782 of those were carries. It actually says on sportsreference.com he never fumbled the ball at Toledo. Yet on his first NFL carry, he made the well, first of all, he made the mistake of carrying the ball closer to his belt buckle as opposed to carrying it higher up toward the pectoral muscle. But that's going to come with experience. If he can carry the ball a little bit more correct, he might be able to keep his fumble numbers down. That's number one. Number two, the kid had over 200 yards in scrimmage last night.
In his debut.
That goes to show you he did not let that fumble really get him down. Not only that, but he also had some veteran presence to tell him to keep his head up.
Well, he's got a good coach in Andy Reid who, it's amazing. It was the first time he had 2 top 10 all-time winning coaches going up against each other in the first game. The first time it's happened since Chuck Noll and Tom Landry went up against each other in a season opener.
And that's going back to the really good old days.
And then you think about the 13th time that a quarterback at the age of 40 started referring to, of course, Tom Brady. And there were a lot of memes last night about the expressions on his face because he didn't have a single passing touchdown last night. But here's the thing to keep in mind. Remember 2 years ago, Monday Night Football, the Chiefs defeated the Patriots 41-14. That was the game, in fact, which one of the few times Jimmy Garoppolo played in a regular season game because of the fact that the Patriots were behind. After they lost that infamous Monday night game, what did Bill Belichick do in that morose voice of his? We're on to Cincinnati. And that's his, every time. You got to go to his press conferences. They're always fun. Yawn. No, but no disrespect to the guy. He is a great head coach. He's led his team to 5 Super Bowl victories. Believe me, he just is never fun to listen to. He always answers in a monotone voice because in his mind, that doesn't matter to him. He's obligated, like every other player and coach, to do these press interviews. But in his mind, he just wants to just coach his team, come up with plays, and think about the next game. That's where his mind is at, and that's why he's been so successful in leading this team to almost 17 division titles. So I could, at the same time, when Bill Belichick did that on Cincinnati move 2 years ago, what happened? Patriots went on a hell of a run, and they won Super Bowl 50. Super Bowl 49 against Seattle. Mm-hmm. So right there, just because they lost last night does not mean for a shadow of a second that New England is out of the race.
Funny that you mentioned Bill Belichick's press conference because he was asked just last night about those 2 touchdown bombs that the Patriots secondary got burned for.
Did he say we're on to New Orleans?
Actually, he said what was the cause of those. He was asked what the cause of those lapses in the defensive secondary were. All he said was bad defense, bad coaching, bad offense. That was it.
Well, you look at the offense. They lost Julian Edelman, who was a huge part of their offense.
He's going to be missed really badly. I mean, Danny Amendola is a good receiver, but Julian Edelman was a really important go-to guy for Tom Brady to work with.
You could put him in the slot. You could put him in the middle. He's great at returning the ball if needed. He's a do-everything receiver. He led the team in receptions and receiving yards last year. So he was a big, important piece of that offense and made that insane catch in Super Bowl 51 against Atlanta.
Good thing that they have Brandon Cooks now in there to work with as well.
Dwayne Allen did little, if anything, last night. And he was supposed to be their big tight end to complement Rob Gronkowski. Gillislee, though, again, give him a lot of props for those 3 short rushing touchdowns. Gronkowski, hopefully he'll get his first touchdowns next week against New Orleans, especially against that secondary. I think he'll have fun against them. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a huge touchdown game. As for the other things that went down with Kansas City, this was a team that everybody thought Patrick Mahomes, after they traded up in the draft to get Patrick Mahomes II out of Texas Tech, and yet, everybody was calling for the end of Alex Smith. Well, this is not the end. This is just the beginning of Alex Smith's season and a possible MVP year.
He's got a lot left in the tank. Do not kid yourselves, please. For all of the talk of how great the Patriots offense was, What about what they did against Tom Brady, holding him to barely 45% of his completions,
267 yards and no passing touchdowns
and
in his home.
And Brandon Cooks, the big ticket acquisition that they got from the Saints, 3 catches, 88 yards.
Well, besides last night's game, there were some other storylines that took place in the offseason. As we all know, Ezekiel Elliott was facing a 6-game suspension. The venerable running back who, in his rookie season last year, had over 1,500 yards to lead the league, 15 touchdowns on the ground. He was suspended due to a domestic violence charge against him from his ex-girlfriend in Columbus, Ohio, last year. However,
turns out the girl wound up lying about the whole thing.
And there were no witnesses to corroborate her accusation. But because the fact that he had this cloud hanging over him, and the NFL has had such a huge issue with dealing with domestic violence, they wanted to make an example of him. And by the way, Ezekiel also had an incident at a bar assaulting a DJ earlier this year too. So he's given the NFL a reason to land this, to give him the 6-game suspension. So as the right of any player, when they are handed down a suspension, they can appeal it, which he did with his lawyers and the NFL Players Association. So then the NFL responded by trying to answer this suspension, so they got an arbitrator. This past Tuesday, the arbitrator ruled on the side of Roger Goodell in the NFL to uphold the 6-game suspension. So then Ezekiel Elliott and his lawyers filed an injunction, a restraining order, but the restraining order was going to ended actually today at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
But he was still going to be able to play week 1 against the Giants. So if you're a fantasy football owner, put him in your lineup. Now, just about an hour and 17 minutes ago, my colleague just found out some breaking news in terms of Ezekiel's situation, that he is going to be playing the entire season because they filed, was it?
Yep, there was a grievance that was filed on behalf of the players union in a Texas court. So the Texas court decided to grant that injunction, and because of a lack of evidence that they saw.
That was in the federal, the judiciary court, right?
Because they saw no evidence to warrant his suspension being held as is. Elliott is going to play the entire season.
For now, but you know what? Roger Goodell is not the type of guy that's going to take this lying down. The same thing with Tom Brady's situation last year. He is going to basically fight this and probably take it to the next level court. And you know Ezekiel is going to respond. So this is far from over.
Yeah.
This is definitely far from over, this situation. But for now, Ezekiel is going to be able to play this season until whatever Roger Goodell is able to do legally. As for the other story on Colin Kaepernick and his inability right now to land a job in the NFL, when other quarterbacks who are questionable statistically and don't have the type of numbers that he has, but because of the fact that, yes, he used his First Amendment rights, that's from his perspective, to protest an issue that was very important to him, social injustice. But at the same time, the NFL is a $13 billion a year business. And when they see a lot of people, the majority of people dislike what he's doing, they have to think with their wallets and realize that if they keep a guy like Kaepernick on their sideline, that's going to piss so many people off that they will just, out of spite for the NFL, not want to watch the games, not buy tickets or any merchandise whatsoever, and that hurts their bottom line. And
at least Kaepernick still has his supporters, specifically a lot of guys in the NFL who continue to wonder why this guy still does not have a job. I'm wondering why this guy doesn't have a job, yet a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, who not only wound up getting implicated in a domestic abuse scandal that never even happened, but also punched out a DJ at a bar, winds up getting a 6-game suspension.
What about Michael Vick and all that after what he did?
And, of course, Michael Vick, who wound up not only getting barred for almost 2 years because of dogfighting, he wound up serving almost 2 years in prison because of dogfighting.
Or Greg Carty for what he did to his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, slamming his ex-girlfriend on a sofa bed full of guns, and he doesn't even so much as get a slap on the wrist. Yet Colin Kaepernick, who all he did was exercise his First Amendment right, gets blackballed, basically.
But at the same time, again, and I understand from where he's coming from, but I also understand from some other fans. They feel as though that disrespects the troops, that disrespects his country.
He wasn't disrespecting the troops. He was calling out those who have committed police brutality. That was what he was arguing about in the first place.
Well, an issue like this is very contentious, and at the same time, again, it's a business. It's a business move. There are probably owners that do support him privately, but can't come out publicly because they know if they do, they could lose a lot of money. And these owners have invested millions, if not billions of dollars into their franchise, and they're not going to see that fall apart for somebody's political stance.
You want to talk politics? What about the joke of DeMaurice Smith being head of the players union? It's painfully obvious this guy has no interest, much less intention, of looking out for the safety of the players in his union, because just last night in that Patriot-Chiefs game, someone had to be taken out of the game because of a head injury.
And how about, I watched him on Real Sports Brian Gumbel, and it doesn't look like he wants to fight the owners at all on behalf of the players in terms of contract disputes, because there could be a looming CBA situation coming up too. And
already he's talking about a work stoppage taking place in 2020.
Which really would hurt you and I, the fans. But at the same time, these players don't get paid the kind of money that they see in other sports. And a lot, especially like Aaron Donald, that's the other storyline I want to bring up. And I hope things work out with Colin. I do. I think a team will. At some point, he will be signed. Don't be shocked to see a team like Jacksonville sign him, because look what they got. Bortles or Henne. Not great shakes. You might see him possibly with Buffalo. So there's two teams, possibly even Cleveland to back up Kaiser. I'm just saying there are going to be teams that will sign him. He will have a job, folks. He will have a job this year. It's a matter of time and depending on the situation. Now, as for Aaron Donald of the LA Rams, holding out, has not taken a single snap in preseason, has not gone to training camp. But you know why? This guy deserves to be paid in the upper echelon of pass rushers since he came into the league.
You want to know why these guys, these NFL athletes, are not getting the money that the guys in Major League Baseball or the NBA, or to a lesser extent the NHL, are getting? Because this high incidence of concussions has everyone really putting up a red flag. I mean, it's gotten to the point where CTE and every other type of syndrome involving head injuries has everyone scared.
It's actually caused a guy like John Urschel to retire from the Ravens this year. We've seen
young. He retired young. He only retired after 4 or 5 years in the league.
And there are a bunch, and he wasn't the only player that retired too this year. Rob Ninkovich actually retired this year from the Patriots. So, and we've seen Ronald Leary retire this year from the Dallas Cowboys. So we've seen some retirements, some caused by the CT storyline that broke out. And this has been a storyline that's been ongoing for the past decade for over a decade. And the movie that actually came out, Concussion, that starred Will Smith, had the doctor who discovered this, and the late Mike Webster, the center for the 4-time Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steelers in the 70s.
Mike Webster, Dave Duerson, Andre Waters, all of those gentlemen wound up passing away. And all of those gentlemen, Mike Webster, by the way, is in the Hall of Fame, all passed away. 2 committed suicide. Webster passed away because he had a heart attack.
How about Junior Seau?
Junior Seau, too. He committed suicide as well. He was the victim of multiple head injuries.
So it really, and it has a lot of parents scared to have their kids play football. That's the thing. These kids are the future of the game. And when you have parents this concerned about their kid playing to the point where they don't want them even playing pee-wee or touch, that really says something right there.
Or even flag football for that matter.
So there's a lot of credence to this story, and it's just going to keep getting. Let's hope that it gets better, and that's why the NFL in the last years are trying to adapt rule changes. But at the same time, they're opening up a lot of leg injuries with these new rules too. So no matter what they do, the NFL, football in general is not a safe game. It's not. It's not. Especially contact football is not a safe game.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned the knee injuries that took place. You would not believe how many knee injuries were suffered during training camp and preseason.
Odell Beckham, the third week against Cleveland, suffered a major knee injury. One of the new the rookie players for the Miami Dolphins tore his ACL.
There were at least 40 ACL injuries that
Forrest
took
Lamb,
place.
the offensive lineman that was supposed to be for the Chargers, rookie, tore his ACL. Edelman, as we mentioned, tore his ACL in Detroit week 2, which is a huge, so there were a lot of torn ACLs and leg injuries that took place, unfortunately, in the preseason. Well, getting away from some of the gloom and doom that has taken place in the NFL with the injuries, the fact is we are back. We've waited 7 months for football. All the fans are going to be lining up at their favorite watering holes, in their man caves, at home at their televisions, gluing their eyes to their tablets, which is the norm nowadays, looking at their fantasy scores, because I'm in one fantasy league.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to probably suck this year, because I always do when it comes to fantasy football for some reason. I can never win.
I played 2 seasons worth of fantasy football. The first time I came in 3rd place. The second time I had so many injuries on my roster that my team didn't even win more than 4 games. Well,
let's get into some games. We already talked about the Thursday night opener between the Chiefs and the Patriots. Now let's get into the in the neighborhood portion. New York Jets, Dallas Cowboys, Jerry World. 3rd straight year that they are playing each other on Sunday Night Football. That's a treat for all of us.
Yeah, it is a treat. Well, unfortunately, I have to go back to the subject of concussions again, because Jerry Jones has given NFL fans another reason to despise him, because he continues to insist that there is no connection between CTE and playing football.
Well, he's misguided, and he's looking out for his billion-dollar interest. But getting to this game, right
as
here.
Far as the game itself, now that Ezekiel Elliott is going to be playing this game and possibly the other 15 games for the rest of this season, there's a strong possibility that the Cowboys could be the cream of the crop in the NFC Eastern Division, if not the entire NFC.
But what about the Giants and the offseason moves they made? Getting Evan Ingram, drafting him out of Virginia Tech, and then...
Actually, Evan Ingram came out of Mississippi.
Yeah, Ole Miss.
And let me tell you, that was a very, very, very important pick that the Giants made, because they've been looking for a good tight end since probably Mark Bavaro.
And yes, without a doubt, or even Boss.
Or even Jeremy Shockey.
Yeah, Shockey. Yeah, not Boss. It's Shockey, the man with the sleeve of tattoos. But they're going against a Cowboys team that they swept last year. 2 out of the 3 losses the Cowboys had in their NFC East 2016 season were at the hands of the Giants. Week 1, that was, of course, the debut of Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. And that last-minute decision not to, keep some clock on the board. That was Terrence Williams right there, his fault in that game. But then the second time, the Giants took control. In this particular game, the fact that the Giants got the acquisition of Brandon Marshall, they made the move to draft Ingram.
Yep.
Now and they still got Sterling Shepard. But here's the question: will Odell play? That's a game time.
That's the $64,000 question right there, because he suffered a pretty bad injury in the preseason, and his health has been the biggest question the entire week. Although if you were to ask Des Bryant says that OBJ is going to play. They had a telephone conversation just recently, and he thinks that OBJ is going to play in this game.
I think he will too. I think it's going to come to a game time decision, but I think he will be all right. But they won't utilize him too much. They'll try and take him in and out of place just to make sure that he's all right. If they see in any instance that he's not 100%, they will make sure he doesn't play, because he is their prized cash cow on that offense, along with Eli Manning, who thank goodness, has yet to suffer an injury.
And
thank
you see
goodness
what the Giants
that he
did
hasn't
to the
suffered.
Cowboys last season in their 2 meetings. It was basically bend but don't break. The Giants held the Cowboys to 17 and 7 points in each of the games. What is the strategy in this game? Do something to contain
Des Bryant.